Well, hello and welcome back to the 330 Project and our second episode. So thank you for spending some time with us today. Just a few minutes to continue the project of learning that if we want God to use us more, we must strive to become less. And so last week we introduced that through the story of John the Baptist, and this week we're going to look at the story of Jeremiah the prophet in Jeremiah chapter 1. And as we think about that, as we start that process, I wonder if you've been like me when you've had those moments where you just feel completely unprepared, completely overwhelmed, and completely insecure about what God had called you to do. When I was at my previous church, I had the honor of doing some spoken word poetry, and there was a Christmas celebration that was in a gymnasium that had thousands of people. I was right there in the center, spotlight on me, memorized my spoken word, and I got to the second stanza and saw my big face on the side screens and completely froze. And I, by the grace of God, was able to remember what it was I was supposed to say. I got through the end of it, put on a happy face till the end, and then afterwards, I felt absolutely crushed, and I felt completely insecure, not just about the fact I'd not done well, but not able to do what God had called me to do, and feeling like I wasn't good enough for this role. I wasn't good enough for this calling at this moment. And so this morning, or this time as we spend together, I want to challenge us and remind us that our insecurities place the focus on who we want to be, and they cause us to lose sight of whose we already are. If we find our identity in doing well or not doing well, then we might become insecure. And hopefully, when you struggle, or if you've had time to fall short, it's not in front of thousands of people with a spotlight in front of you. But even if it has, and even if it was, our insecurities cause us to look at ourselves and who we want to be, feeling not good enough, feeling unable, feeling incapable. But it takes our sight off of whose we already are. Now in Jeremiah chapter 1, Jeremiah is being called to be a prophet. He is called by God, and we get a glimpse of this calling. Starting in verse 4, it says, "The word of the Lord came to me being Jeremiah in this case, and said, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." That's a big calling. And like many of us, Jeremiah may think, this is too big. I'm not capable. I'm insecure. I'm not able to do this great thing you've called me to do, Lord. So here's how he responds. He says, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I'm too young." You have those moments when you start to put your own insecurities and you verbalize them, and we give them greater power, even in our own hearts and minds. We give our insecurities a greater power, a greater weight than God's calling. But calling is greater than insecurities. Insecurities is less than our calling. Here's how God responds. He says, "Do not say I'm too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you to say. Do not be afraid of them. I am with you, and I will rescue you, declares the Lord." Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, "I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations, the kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." That Jeremiah, like many of us, has been called to something great. Now again, maybe some of you are like, but I'm not in an official position. But everyone's a leader to someone, so we should aim to be a good one. And so maybe it's leading your family. Maybe it's leading your friends at school. Maybe it's leading coworkers. Maybe it's leading a small group Bible study. Maybe it's leading as an example in your workplace, in your neighborhood. And that's a great calling. That the degree or the importance of a calling is not contingent upon how many people. It's contingent about how faithful we are to the calling we've received. As Paul says in Ephesians 4, we want to live a life worthy of the calling that we've received. And if we give into insecurities to the point where we cause that to make us forget whose we are, then we're not living the life God has for us that is worthy of the calling. So let me encourage you with what God said to Jeremiah. God told Jeremiah that he knew him, that he had set him apart, and that he had appointed him to a specific role. All of our callings have these three components. They're personal, that God knows you. He's not going to call you to do something that you were not already specifically and intricately designed to do by the grace of God and through his gifts. He knows you. He's also has prepared you. So the calling is personal. The calling has preparation. He's prepared you in advance for good works, even if you don't know what they are yet. Or even if you're in the midst of it and you haven't seen the preparation, it's there. And then lastly, that he's given you a purpose. He's given you a purpose because the purpose for Jeremiah was that he appointed him over nations and to preach and to speak what he was told to speak. For you, you may not be over nations, but you are a leader to someone. So you may as well want to aim to be a good one. And so as we close, I want to encourage you that you are known and deeply loved by God, that he knows what's best for you, and he has a purpose for your life, even if you don't see it. And so with that in mind, remember that insecurities, they cause us to focus on who we want to be, but our calling reminds us of whose we already are. I hope that encourages you, and I hope that it's something that challenges you as you go about your day, go about your week, that you have been called for a purpose, and as long as you're still here, God is not done working in you and through you for his mighty good works and for his kingdom. Thank you so much for joining us for our episode 2, talking about insecurities and calling. We look forward to continuing to unpack the 330 Project, which reminds us that if we want God to use us more, we must strive to become less. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching.